first video lecture that will be based on our first two readings, the Chapter 5 Reagan chapter on Indigenous education, as well as a Tharp article on 7 mountains in a map. I just want to first say that I think that conversation on Wednesday really went much better than I had expected. Like I said, this is the first time I'm teaching this course online, and so I was just really impressed with everybody's engagement and with everybody's contribution. So I'd like to actually start off with our conversation that we had on purpose and just touch a little bit more on why I posed that question. Like so many of you said, the reason why I posted this question was really sort of in relation to the first chapter that we read on Reagan, especially because this idea of purpose was so integral to the goal of Indigenous education. And I find it really fitting to consider and really think about as future teachers, to think about your vocation. The etymology of vocation, it means a calling. And so, particularly for the people in the course who plan on becoming teachers, this question of what is your purpose really needs to be one that you think about, particularly as you think about seeing yourself as being purposed to be a teacher, but even more so an educator. Again, I want to really emphasize this difference between education and schooling. And I want you to begin to use, or rather recognize that difference even in your language. So that there were a few times in the discussion where folks were using the word education when they probably should have been using the word school. And the same goes for this difference between a school teacher and an educator. So that when I sort of say seeing yourself as an educator, that's seeing yourself as an educator not just in the school building, but out of the school building, right? So that when we're sort of thinking about what Daniel calls random acts of kindness, I'm not so sure if they're necessarily random or if we should call them random, as much as they should be what we do. So that your role as an educator, again, doesn't sort of just start and stop within your classroom setting, but that's always happening. That you're doing that from now. That these acts of kindness, that you, like Gustavo said, part of his purpose is giving back to the community. That you're doing that now. That you're doing that kind of education from now. Before you get certification, right? Or before you sort of enter your elementary or high school or art or music class. That you're doing some of that educating starting from now. And that you're seeing how teaching is a part of why you are here. And a part of your purpose. Again, because your teacher identity isn't necessarily separate from your personal identity. So that your purpose as a teacher and your larger purpose shouldn't be separated either. I think folks did a really good job with sort of handling that question and thinking about that question. I just want to sort of acknowledge Michelle's point that I think it's definitely true that we have different purposes sort of throughout our life, so that we can sort of think about purpose in different ways and at different times, right? We can sort of think about again, Michelle's idea that she sort of seeks her purpose each day. So what does it mean for us to sort of reflect and meditate that as soon as we wake up? Like, what am I purpose to do today? What am I purpose to do this week? What am I purpose to do this year, right? So as you sort of can guess, a lot of that is a part of goal setting as well, and thinking about what you sort of want to accomplish. But it's a bit deeper than goal setting in the sense that it's a part of it's a part of something that's meaningful and purposeful, but more than anything, it's about what specifically you are sort of called to do. If we think about there's certain things that sort of you, Michelle, or you, Stephen, or you, Gustavo, or you, Brittany, or you, Kristen, or you, Malika, or you, Daniel, or you, Brittany, or Megan. Thinking about what am I sort of called to do. I think that's really important too. I think it's important to sort of make these generalizations in terms of what we're all sort of supposed to be doing in terms of acts of kindness. But then there's also a specific story that your life is supposed to be writing as well. And again, I want you to see how being an educator is integral to that story, not just in this classroom, but sort of in your everyday. And that message, again, is sort of coming out of my acknowledgement of this importance and significance of what Indigenous education gives to us, and sort of the ways in which they can, that line of thinking can really be important for our own conceptualizations about being human, not just sort of a teacher, but being human. I think that folks did a really good job sort of with connections and certainly with main points. And I'll sort of, in class physically, I'll sort of touch a little bit on those if we have some time. We have a lot to do on Monday. But what I wanted to actually do to help you think about other main points that you might not have necessarily gotten from the reading, but will be helpful for you in thinking about Indigenous education and in thinking about history as well. Excuse me, that's my dog. Are the sort of the following key words. And it's my hope that we're beginning to use some of these key words at later points, sort of throughout our conversation. It's my hope that I'll see these key words in your papers, and that I'll see these key words in your conversation. Again, these key words is a language that I'm trying to offer to you as I'm trying to sort of give you tools to put on your critical conscious tool belt. So the first word that is important when examining any culture, as we were doing when we were reading the Reagan chapter on Indigenous peoples, is epistemology. And epistemology, quite simply, is how you know what you know. It is how your life experiences have taught you to order the world. So that when we're using words like typical and normal and good and bad, all of those things become defined in our mind's eye vis-a-vis our environment. And epistemology is very much tied to culture. And it can be difficult to sort of pinpoint epistemology in the sense that it's kind of like being a goldfish in a fish bowl, in that you're sort of in the water, so you might not always be able to sort of point out the water particles that you're immersed in. And epistemology sort of works the same way. I mentioned those earlier words like typical and normal and good and bad because oftentimes we can interrogate our epistemology through our language, like examining how we call things normal or how we sort of call things typical or average or what have you. Epistemology becomes really important for us to consider when thinking about other cultures because that becomes our standard oftentimes. We're sort of examining, why people do what they do. I want to continue with epistemology, but I'm seeing I'm sort of running up on time, so let me stop here and continue on to the next slide.